Hey, it's Nathan. Welcome to another special episode of the Tech Glow Up. This week, I am incredibly thrilled to be talking with Nic Fonta of Autodesk. You may or may not know that Autodesk is one of the largest, most commonly used 3D software tools out there. If you're in architecture and development of large buildings, or if you are in the 3D visual space in movie making and editing, you are probably a big fan or know a lot or spend a lot of time in Autodesk tools. Nic Fonta is the lead of XR tools, including Autodesk Workshop. What a fascinating career of twists and turns that brought Nic from being an early software developer on a $35 million cockpit simulator. And now he is attacking a $280 billion problem of waste due to rebuild in the construction industry. He's using spatial collaboration in a multi-platform XR experience to help architects and engineers and developers get on the same page to identify errors before you spend money and effort building them, and to transform the architectural and design planning space. Oh my gosh, such a fun conversation. I think you'll find the customer focus and the curiosity that Nic brings to his work to just be an inspiration. That connection to customer, that connection to the problem space, that constant curiosity and learning about what makes a difference and how you can help people, not by changing their tools, but by taking the tools that they already use to the next level, breaking it out of silos and making it something that everybody in the team or in the project can use. What a fascinating conversation, from multi-million dollar fighter cockpits to addressing a $280 billion problem in the construction industry. Nic Fonta, Autodesk. Let's watch the tech glow up.
I want to make sure we talk about why XR is so relevant and why it can really transform how people work in the various industries that we serve at Autodesk. I'll cover that, but really the motivation and the beliefs that I have, of course, of how that can really, like, truly change how people work. I can, yeah.
I can already sense there's a personal connection in there, so I can't wait to get in. I think we should just get started. Hello and welcome to the Tech Glow Up. I'm Nathan C., and today I am extremely thrilled to be talking with Nic Fonta, General Manager of XR at Autodesk. Nic, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm very excited to be here and get the opportunity to talk about everything we do.
Nic, as somebody who has been following some of the largest, most active companies working in spatial computing and XR, I've had my eye on Autodesk for years, right? Autodesk was an early pioneer in the 3D space for VFX, for movies, for other things. And their move into XR was a very exciting one for me to see, an early inspiration. So it's like a super treat to have you and Autodesk on the Tech Glow Up. For those who haven't been tracking Autodesk's involvement in 3D and XR, could you introduce yourself and the work that you do there?
Of course. So yeah, you're right. I mean, Autodesk has been first, we've been around for a long time, and we have been pioneering a bunch of different solutions out there in the design and make world. So we help as architects, designers in various industries design and make stuff. So bridges, infrastructures, movies, games, cars, factories. Our mission is to help these creators design and build things in the best possible way. And we've been doing that for a long time. So of course, 3D or real-time VR, AR are all technologies and topics that are very important to us. And we believe that we can leverage those to deliver value differently in more novel and efficient ways to all of these people. Yes.
And for all of these creators, and I'm going to ask a clarifying specific question, but maybe it's not as specific. How do you, as the general manager for XR, approach these ideas in these different industries with the XR tools that you use?
Yes. We actually, before my time at Autodesk had VR prototypes in the 90s, allowing CAD users build and bring their AutoCAD scenes into VR. Very clunky hardware as you could back in the days, but we had a history of testing those technologies out, trying to look for opportunities to deliver value to our customers. Now, in my role, I joined Autodesk with the ask of bringing my real-time simulation rendering expertise to the table and try to see how can VR, AR, and XR generally transform how people work. So we've been looking at how can these experiences bring people together? How can they help get better spatial understanding of what they're and designing and eventually building? So that's what we're doing. We're trying to deliver value leveraging these technologies and AI with a go-to-market versions to meet our customers where they're at and just transform how they work.
I have so many questions about how you meet such a diverse suite of customers where they're at with different tools like runtime, like VR, like remote collaboration. Because if I'm thinking about like film producers and car manufacturers, their their needs for like runtime speed and processing power and fidelity might be very different. And when you're talking about spatial computing tech, some are very focused on like games and mobile and speed, and others are focused on detail and precision. It seems like a lot of different points of complexity that you might have to manage while you're navigating, defining these new tools. Without getting too far ahead, how do you balance those disparate needs, and how do you approach driving value to those different verticals and customers?
Super easy. Don't worry. No, it's not. Great question. So a few things. We serve three main industries at Autodesk: the AECO industry, architecture, engineering, construction, and operations; the manufacturing space; and then, to your point, media and entertainment. There are definite trends of convergence between AECO and manufacturing. We've seen this for 5, 6+ years now. And we've been lucky and fortunate as a company to serve both of these industries. And we see convergence in terms of technologies, ways of working, bringing typically an industrialized way of thinking about how you do manufacturing to the AECO industry, for example. Media and entertainment is slightly different. You're right. Now, that being said, across all of these industries, there are a few very common points. You have people, they're dreamers, thinkers, designers that think about what the future could be, whether it's for a building, a bridge, train floor, a car, or a movie. People are thinking and imagining and designing from early ideation to detailed design, collaborating with multiple people in the process. And this thinking and creative process can truly be enhanced with more real-time, collaborative, and immersive type of experiences.
I love that answer. That's amazing. Thank you, Nick. I'm curious, you mentioned some background in runtime, in some of these sort of precursor technologies to the XR space that you're in now. Can you talk a little bit about how you got here and what started your journey in innovative technologies?
Yeah, thank you. I'll try to make this like semi-short of a story. Interestingly enough, so I'm a software engineer by training, graduated 27 plus years ago. And when I went to university, I hesitated between architecture and engineering. I chose engineering. So keep that in the background. You might. The first job I had, I was working for a flight simulator company in Montreal, where I'm based. And my first project was for a jet fighter for an Asian country that shall remain unnamed. And the actual simulator was a MiG-29 cockpit that was cut out with a huge headset with two screens, tons of wires, as you can imagine. I was what, around 97, I think. And my first experience was trying to figure out how we can bring data, how we can simulate and do the rendering with a huge headset for training fighter pilots, takeoff, land, and engaging fighter fights in the air with those huge first version of what I've ever experienced to be our device. You have see-through and VR, and like it was such a sophisticated device. It was like 35 million US dollars, I think, that it was costing back in the days. So that was my first experience. Little did I know that I would end up after this debate between architecture and engineering, after this first job, little did I know was end up at Autodesk serving architects, building VR, MR, XR experiences to deliver value to them. But yeah, I've worked in real time my whole life, flight simulator, gaming. I worked at Electronic Arts, always close to these sorts of experiences. And that's why I was brought over to try to figure out what this new opportunity can mean for us and for our customers.
I'm thrilled at this origin story. I'm I'm also a little I'm making this way more dramatic than it needs to be. I'm also a little bit curious about the role of a computer science, a software engineer in the role as a product lead or in the almost like a category lead, excuse me. A software engineer in the role of a category lead in my is a little novel and shows me that more than just the technology is getting you up in the morning and making you excited about your days. I don't know how to phrase the question, but do you have any perspective or any thoughts on being such a social and collaborative minded software engineer? You're working against type. Is I'm trying to get at that idea.
I appreciate the question. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a good question. I started my journey like most engineers coding stuff, and eventually I became like group lead and development manager. And what happened to me is that I had to fill in for a product manager, peer of mine, who could not go to London for a conference and for customer visits. So I ended up finding myself on a stage in front of a relatively big audience, presenting and then going and visiting customers. It was like, my God, I love doing this. This is, with all respect to engineers, a lot more fun than coding stuff. That was my reaction. So at that point, I knew I had to become the product manager, which meant developing this business sense, developing this customer empathy, curiosity about understanding customer and industry problems. So became the product manager. And a few years ago, I had the opportunity to pitch for a business case to our CEO at Autodesk. And I became in charge with that title of like product, but also like sales, CS, like customer success and marketing. So we're leading with a unified front for the entire business brand and offering, which I truly appreciate and love.
I'm so glad you followed me on that sidebar. Thank you. And I may need to poke a little bit around the edges of this model for innovation at Autodesk because I do know that it's treated very seriously and uniquely. But I want to come back to this part that you mentioned, right? Which is when you start to see how your customers are using your tools, you start to get that feedback loop into the product. It's pretty addictive. And one of the questions that I try to ask everybody is what are your favorite ways to learn from your customers and learn about the impact of your work and how it resonates with the people that you're trying to support. Do
Yeah.
you still just go to conferences? Is it conferences, or what's the way that you like to learn about your audience these days and stay in touch with?
Yeah. So on my staff, I have one of the people on my staff is responsible for the business and operations, and she leads the group of product managers. So we have a product management practice within our team, and they are responsible, just like any product managers, to understand customer problems and industry problems and translate that into what we might want to do. I don't have to, but I still go and visit customers as often as I can. This is one of the favorite pieces of my job, and conferences are great. Calls are nice, but going to a firm, to an actual site, sitting down with customers, ideally, I try to ask them, like, can you give me a tour of your firm? And I notice a bunch of different things when we do this, which leads me or gives me the opportunity to ask questions about an architecture firm. There's a bunch of layouts and drawings on the walls. Oh, how do you use paper drawings, for example? Or they build like physical maquettes, and you get to understand a lot better the problems that their journey, how they go about doing their work on a day-to-day basis. So I love that. It leads to much richer and deeper conversations, and you get to learn a lot more by doing that. Yes, I still do that, even though I don't think I have to for my role, but I'm maybe at the same time, I think I do.
I vote for the latter. Yeah. I have seen it. It's totally just my personal bias, but when teams top to bottom are aligned on and have a shared understanding of their customers, the problems that they're facing, how they approach those problems, all of that can be so real. And as you were talking, I'm sitting here and I'm surrounded by my desk. And it was like, oh, my whole world, like when I'm on this call with you, is just encapsulated in this desk. And I don't know that I would think to tell you about anything over there. And right, so the like magic of just being in the room is that you can be curious beyond the screen and be working together instead of having it be a little bit of a performance. So that sort of connection and collaboration is a theme I'm excited to see. So the space of 3D, the space of spatial computing, and the space of like even design, with all of, you had mentioned earlier, AI assistance in design and concepting and others, has really pushed the rate of change in our industries, in all these industries, really. Can you talk to an instance or maybe how you're approaching the current moment of change
Mhm.
to respond to opportunities, challenges, or maybe even just like new things you've learned from customer insights?
Of course. Let me maybe take a bit of a step back and then I'll get right back into your question. So what my team with XR has been focusing on in the last few years is delivering to architects, engineers, designers in the AECO, architecture, engineering, construction space, a immersive, collaborative XR solution called Workshop XR that in the simplest way allows them to get together, collaborate, and increase their spatial understanding, common spatial understanding of what it is that they're trying to design before they start building it. And the reason why this is so important is because designing complex things like buildings, infrastructures, as you can imagine, is very difficult, involves many different professionals from different disciplines to coordinate and get their things together. So the structural engineering with MEP engineering with architecture, all of these disciplines have to get together for the building or the infrastructure to be constructible in a sustainable way. So on the construction side, like we know today, that's about $280 billion spent every year across the globe, material rework on construction sites because of poor communication, poor alignment, and difficulties to do and develop and build things the way they were intended. So the earlier you could get people to find those problems in the pipeline, cheaper it is, the more sustainable it is. You reduce material loss, you reduce schedule delays, and of course, costs. So that's what we're trying to do. And XR is a great way with the right experience to extend the Autodesk industry cloud for the AC industry, which is called Forma. So we're extending Forma with immersive experiences to help these professionals do better, more efficient design reviews and design collaboration. So they find these problems earlier, they're more engaged in these conversations and in these reviews together, and ultimately deliver a better design to the site, which translates to better buildings.
It it's almost bringing some of that software development practice of aligning all of the requirements early, like doing those tests to make sure that the code's gonna be right. I remember when I was early in my sort of marketing project management that I went to a talk and it was for digital project managers, but one of the panelists worked at a railway. And she said, you might be able to absorb a 10% misestimation on a marketing project, but I have to be millimeter precise over thousands of miles if I'm building a new railway, right? Like you can't be even inches off when you're trying to move a train like that. So I love this idea of bringing some of that agile collaboration, that early testing into what typically feels like a very physical, is very hands-on trade, giving it some of that flexibility, that agile quality. For those who maybe don't have a picture in their mind about what an immersive experience for architecture design might feel like or look like, can you talk just like super quick about, are people on VR headsets? Are they in tablets? Are they on desktops? Are they doing all three? What's it feel like? What's it going to look like to be in these tools?
Yeah, of course. It's like serious Beat Saber. No, not really. But the truth is, we do support today different hardware platforms and devices, and in the future, we believe we'll support more. So to your point, the main and ultimate way to experience your design is today for us in virtual reality. So different folks, an architects, a engineer, structural engineer from different geolocations often will say, all right, instead of meeting on whatever platform we might be using as a conference tool, let's go into Workshop XR, workshop this. Everybody puts their headset. They have access to all their data, their projects, they're loading the models. And there's two modes, right? One, which is the equivalent of the conference room where you put your model on a virtual table, you look at it, you discuss as you would with peers around the table, and you say, all right, this is what we're going to do today. We're going to look at this area. We're going to go in mechanical room on floor 6 and look at whatever latest changes and make sure that everything is up to requirements and what we want. And then you can, of course, jump in full scale mode, walk around, look at clashes, issues, find problems that typically you would miss when not experiencing your design in such an immersive way. And that's really the key here. You can do reviews on the 2D screen, but you won't get a sense of scale, of space, of relationships, of maybe access to do maintenance, ergonomics, and whatever it might be. It's a much better, more intuitive and natural way to agree on what it is that you're trying to design and eventually build, and find spot issues and fix them early before you go and build them and say, you know what, we need to rebuild this differently because we thought about it the wrong way.
I love it. Am I cutting you off in the middle of your description? Oh no. Because there's also the secondary mode. So you're like reviewing in space, but then did I actually cut you off? I'm so sorry.
You didn't. So let me clarify. Yeah, there is this virtual conference mode where you have the model on the table, and then there's where you could go full immersive and walk in
Perfect.
your model.
Perfect.
And in addition to this, yes, the ultimate experience, as I said, is in VR, but we also offer a web portal into this so people can join from the web. It's not as, of course, as immersive because it's on whatever platform, hardware platform, but you could follow a leader, you could walk around, still getting a better sense of what the space is, but more importantly, collaborating with people who are
Love it. And we were on the journey in this deep dive about how it works to how do you, how have you learned and responded to how your users are using your product, telling you, finding value in it, and how, as a go to market leader, practice lead, how do you help a company like Autodesk understand opportunities, market sentiments from folks like that?
Yeah. Let me start maybe with the first part of your questions. What we typically hear from the firms and the companies using our products are two main things. First, our main value proposition is confirmed. They're in project in teams doing reviews and collaborating in immersive XR experiences, have more engagement with their team members, are more focused during the reviews, will find a lot more problems earlier on. And there's some companies who are deriving direct data out of a project on which we use XR compared to projects on which we don't. And they're like, God, day and night in terms of the amount of problems that we found earlier on. So that's the first return for them. The second main use case that we hear is around security review and validation. There are a lot of security hazards on construction sites. So some teams will use the same experience to immerse themselves in the project, and they will try to see, all right, where do we have security risks here? And how should we act on this prior to going to the site to increase safety, lower number of accidents and problems they have on the site? We have examples of this, like Dura Vermeer, one of our customers in the Netherlands, has been using Workshop XR for those two use cases. We actually published a customer success story about this. If you're interested, I can give you the link. And we have another company, Sweco, also in Europe, mainly based in Sweden, architecture and engineering firm doing very similar things. They're bringing their clients in to help their end client get a better understanding of what it is that they're buying or that they will be owning in the future to, again, increase alignment and spatial understanding.
I love the last two things that you called out are discoveries of additional value that your clients, by having this collaborative space, by having a thing that they can start to test, get familiar with, see their data, see their models in new ways, like unlock extra use cases, extra layers of communication, of information transfer that nobody planned for, but is extremely valuable. I remember like asking an industrial training panel, who was your biggest, who surprised you the most when you did this project? And they specifically called out the middle managers that you would typically, they were like, the 60-year-old middle managers loved it because they could go into the training and see their locations, their staff, and the workflows without having to travel to their 12 global locations that they managed. And it was totally separate from what the product was designed to deliver, but a very key stakeholder found a lot of extra value in it. And I think those are the kinds of happy instances that start to take an experimental technology into one that's very sticky for certain kinds of users and teams. So cool.
Oh. Can I add one thing to this? I kind of want to.
Oh, please do. Yeah. I'm too interested in what you got to say here, Nick. Bring it.
I'll share another story. Goes back to, the start of my journey here at Autodesk. It was about, I don't think, 11 years ago or so. It was very new for us. We thought maybe XR and real-time experiences could change how people work in the AEC and manufacturing space. We just didn't know how exactly. So doing research with a very small team, building prototypes, going to customers, putting headsets on their faces and try to see like what works, what doesn't. And I remember very clearly one of my first customer visits here close to Montreal. It was an architecture firm, and we had our first VR prototype back then. And we got there. The head of the project was interested in experiencing their own architecture project in VR. Set everything up. It was harder to set up back then, but still, we did it. Put the headset on their face, and as they're walking around, the usual reaction, oh my God, this is fabulous. I can now understand the space. I feel like those are the words people use. I feel what my project will be like, as opposed to I look and understand the project. And at some point during the experience, the architect started on a very specific area of their project. And they were saying something like, oh, your tool is broken, Nick. Look at this, the geometry here, it's all twisted and wrong. And I could see on my laptop what he was looking at in VR. And sure enough, the geometry was twisted. There was something off with the main entrance. I was, okay, that's awkward. Like, how can our tool break the geometry? But I didn't say anything. So, all right, thank you for the feedback. And as he continued his tour, I just started Revit, which was the tool that he had his data in, and it went to the exact same spot. And sure enough, the geometry was broken at the source in his project. So I didn't say anything. I let him finish the tour, and then he took the headset off, and I just turned the laptop around and he showed him his project in the tool that he uses day in, day out. For months, he's been working on this project. And he just couldn't believe it. He was like, oh my God, how could I have missed this thing for months? I've been working in this project for months and never noticed. And that was for me the moment in time where I knew we were up to something. Like, all right, there's something greater with these experiences. It really can transform how people interact, understand the space, work together. And I knew we were up to something.
It's like an incredible gift when you can give a leader or a designer a piece of feedback that they've become, right, clarity about something that they're so close to that they can't see themselves. And this idea that just like a shift in perspective, right? A little bit of feeling of presence can just open up a whole new way of seeing, of collaborating, communicating. I've been working through editing a few episodes, and this concept of spatial is different because you feel it is like going to absolutely be his theme for season 2 because it just keeps coming. Oh goodness, I'm having so much fun, Nick. I think it's time to get in. I think we've done a good job of diving into the product, some really great learnings, and like this fantastic feedback engine bringing ideas and validation to the product in really lovely way. As you're looking forward in the next 6 months, what's the glow up? What's the big transformation or audacious goal that you're working on with Workshop XR and the XR practice at Autodesk?
For sure. So I'm going to pick two things to highlight. Hopefully that's okay with you. So the first is, since our vision is really to extend the Autodesk platform and form our industry cloud with these immersive collaborative experiences, we want, as we've talked about earlier, we want to provide the additional value of immersive. That's a given. That's what we're doing. But what we also want to do is make sure that architects, engineers, designers have access to everything they need to do a proper design review in that space, in that new experience. For this to happen, we need to continue providing access in Workshop XR to existing capabilities that the traditional 2D interfaces and solutions that Autodesk offer. So the goal is to get to a point where you can do your full review without having to take off the ad set, because you have access to not only immersive space and enhanced new immersive capabilities, but also the 2D capabilities that you're familiar with. So that is number one. The second, I alluded to it earlier, is the work related to AI. We started our AI journey at Autodesk about a decade ago, probably even before that, with research projects, of course. AI is not new at Autodesk. We're just more intentional now about our AI journey. And for Workshop XR, it's not an exception. We truly believe that AI and XR are going to be catalysts to one another. In immersive space, in immersive experiences, AI can be a true companion to facilitate the different jobs and different actions that you, as a designer or an architect, have or are trying to do. So we were trying to really push and integrate with what is called the Autodesk Assistant at Autodesk and integrate that into Workshop XR to help assist really the user, the customer in their journey, in their immersive journey. And we believe that in XR, AI agents will be able to get smarter in immersive space and in spatial experiences and learn over time about spatial relationships and how people go about understanding and feeling the space and immersive experiences. So we believe those two, that's why I said those two are going to be catalysts to one another in the future. And this is an area we're investing.
There's this continuation of the idea of additional layers that help you have a clear perspective on the work that you're doing that just fits in very nicely. And I have to tell you, I was like purposely keeping myself on mute when you're talking about the first goal because that trust, right? Yes, I love what I'm seeing in this headset. This looks great. How do I translate that experience, that data, that context, that perspective back into my notes when I got to go sit at in Revit or others? And that idea of building bridges between the virtual and the flat or the traditional, and that really that you can trust that what you changed here, even though it's a different mode, a different space, is going to be the same thing that you want when it's on this other station, is like, is
Critical.
such, it's, thank you. It is a critical step for almost any 3D application that has those multiple touch points, right? Right, interoperability is critical, and you got to go meet your customers in the tools, the workflows, right, the services that they're already in. So not an easy task, I can imagine, but like when you're talking about adoption and like moving a whole industry forward, that level of connectivity, critical.
Very important.
Amazing. So while we're on the topic of critical problems, if there were if I could hand you a magic wand that you could wave and remove one blocker that's in the way of this glow up, what's the thing that you would get out of the way of Workshop XR and your team of folks supporting designers and create?
I would have to say, first, one of the challenge for any real-time experience, whether they're truly XR or not, though the challenge is even bigger or greater in XR, that we sometimes don't speak about enough, in my opinion, is that the data, especially in this space and the industries that we're serving at Autodesk, the data that our customers work with, the data was not meant to be experienced in real time, let's say at 72 or 90 frames a second with 2 renderings every frame, which means there's a lot of optimization and preparation and reorganizations need to happen on our platform. So since day one, we've worked on this. We knew this was a very important problem to solve. We've been working on this for years. We made amazing progress. We will need to continue making progress there and optimizing the data because the data is so complex that we need to be very creative in how we optimize it so that it runs and it provides the right experience. So you go back to your question, we will continue to work on this, but if we could solve that problem for real, that'd be amazing. Second, I'm going to say hardware, like XR hardware. It's still a barrier today. It's a lot more democratized and easier to use than it was. It's certainly easier than what I talked about almost 30 years ago with this super convoluted headset for the jet fighter simulator at $35 million. But even in recent years, price points, setup, hardware capability, all of that has greatly improved. And recently we've started seeing new hardware devices coming up, which is extremely exciting. So if I could wave a magic wand and accelerate that democratization of hardware, that would be extremely helpful as well.
I think there's 90% of this industry that's right there behind you. That's been the thing we've been waiting for years. I love it. Oh my gosh, Nick, we are getting so close. This has been such a lovely chat. Are you ready for the speed round?
Yes, always ready. I think.
Perfect. So, first, if there was one key takeaway that you want people, listeners, to walk away from our conversation about innovation and XR, what would you want them to leave?
I think probably a lot of listeners hopefully share this fundamental belief that I have and my team has, which is these technologies will be transformative. The promise of these technologies changing how we work, how people work, so they're more efficient, they're more engaged, they collaborate better, and ultimately, like I said, we build and deliver a better world that's more sustainable and that provide better places for people to live, work in, and spend their life. I truly fundamentally believe that there's a lot of progress that we can make there, and I'm extremely excited about this.
I love it. I'm also a nerd about strategic planning, and you seem to have a, a pretty long term view of some of these things. I'm curious, we're right at the end of 2025. What quarter is your strategic planning brain in?
When are we doing strategic planning? Is that the question?
Where where is your strategic brain planning and thinking about in the future? Are you focused on closing out Q4? Are you building new visions for second half of 26?
Thinking about closing Q4 wouldn't really count as being strategic thinking, in my opinion, even though it's very important. And I do pay attention to this, but in terms of strategic, longer term thinking, I love thinking about what the future might look like and using this as an anchor for everything that we do, helping whether it's engineers, customer success people, designers, product managers, having a North Star of what we believe in, that of course is also rooted into industry analysis and competition and whatnot. But having a core, strong belief in why we think this is going to be so transformative is key in guiding people. I've just finished a round of strategic planning actually last week where we think about longer term, medium term, and what does that mean for us as a next step and how we get there and how we walk towards that long term vision for the next year.
Amazing. When you know where you're going, it's a lot easier to make a path, make a plan to get there. Quickly, do you have a spicy soundbite to share? Maybe a hot take on technology, trends, culture, or otherwise? No pressure.
Yeah, it's fine. If you give me 5 seconds, I'll think of something. I think I'll go back to something we discussed already because it's truly and timely relevant. The star space, broadly speaking, is whether some of us have been looking at this for a long time, but it's still new. It is very innovative. We still have a lot of things to understand and figure out. So the space is very fluid. And the different key players, whether it comes to hardware or firmware and all of those different players, everything is in motion. And I find that fascinating, a little bit exhausting, but mostly fascinating. And I've been very interested. I find it very interesting what we've seen on the XR hardware front in the last few months. Extremely stoked about what we might be seeing in 2026 calendar on that front and how that might impact all of us, not just at Autodesk, all of us experiences builders in how we think and how we see the future of all. So yeah, very.
I love it. Again, I think there's many who are rooting for your prediction there. And lastly, Nick, it's a simple one. How can people follow up? And do you have a call to action to share with the listeners?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for asking. So our main spot to go to is our on LinkedIn. We could share the link if you want to. So LinkedIn would be the main place. And we also have a bi-monthly AEC, Architecture, Engineering, Construction, XR community newsletter on our website. So autodesk.com and Workshop XR. You can use that newsletter if you're interested. Those would be the main two spots to hear about what's going on our side of the world.
Fantastic. Oh my goodness. Nic Fonta, General Manager of XR Autodesk, leading the charge for collaboration in Workshop XR and traveling the globe to learn from your customers. It's been so exciting to learn about your journey in innovation. And I love that it started with a $35 million cockpit simulator. That is a new one for the Tech Glow Up. Thank you for sharing this very strategic, customer-focused perspective on feeling that you're there, feeling presence and collaboration with others can transform the way that we work and work to reduce $250 billion in global loss on botched building projects. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you on the Tech Glow Up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nathan, for having me. I've had a blast. Great conversation. Thank you.
Love it.